The silence in the cabin was heavy, like the forest holding its breath. Emma sat by the fireplace, her face pale but her eyes burning with determination. Jack lit the fire, though his thoughts were tangled. He knew Gregory hadn't left. "Emma, you need to be ready," he said softly. She nodded. "I know. This is my fight." She stood, her hands still trembling. "You gave me hope, Jack. I didn't know I could fight." The old man looked at her. "You're stronger than you think, but what's your move?" Emma took a deep breath. "I have to face him, end this." Suddenly, the air quivered, and Gregory's cold laugh echoed through the room. "You can't hide, daughter of the woods." His voice was like thunder. Jack grabbed his staff, but Emma stopped him. "No, this is mine." She stepped to the door and flung it open. Gregory stood in the forest, his figure flickering in the moonlight breaking through the clouds. "You're mine," he hissed. Emma clenched her fists, her eyes blazing. "I'm not yours, never was." She raised her hands, and light poured from her palms, bright as stars gathered in her grip. Gregory screamed, summoning shadows, but they dissolved under her light. Jack whispered prayers behind her, his voice fueling her strength. Emma stepped forward, and the forest trembled. "You have no power over me," she shouted. The light from her hands struck Gregory, and he howled. His form began to crumble. "You can't," he growled, his voice fading. Emma didn't back down. Her power grew, as if the forest itself backed her. Suddenly, Gregory vanished, leaving only an echo of his scream. Silence returned, now peaceful. Emma fell to her knees, breathing hard. Jack rushed to her, steadying her. "You did it," he said, his voice shaking with relief. Emma looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "I'm free because of you." She stood, her face glowing. "I'm sorry I brought trouble to your home." Jack shook his head. "You reminded me why I'm here, to help." Emma smiled for the first time that night. "I have to go. The forest is calling." She stepped toward the door, but turned back. "Thank you, Jack. I won't forget." She vanished into the woods, blending into the night. Jack watched her go, feeling peace. The storm had passed, the stars shone. He returned to the fireplace, knowing this night had changed him forever. Morning at the prison was especially heavy. Even the walls seemed to know what was coming. The metallic clink of keys and footsteps on concrete sounded dull and uneasy. In his cell, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, fingers clasped. His gaze was fixed on the cold floor. He wasn't the same man brought here 7 years ago. Time and regret had doused the fire in his eyes, leaving deep lines on his face. Guards expected the usual requests: steak dinner, a call to family, a final note. But when the warden asked, Ethan's voice was firm. "I want to see Max." Some exchanged glances. A death row inmate choosing a dog over people. For Ethan, Max wasn't just a pet. He was his only friend, there before the trial, the verdict, when the world turned away. Now, in his final hours, Ethan didn't crave forgiveness. He just wanted to see eyes that never judged him. The warden paused. He'd heard odd requests: ice cream, an old radio, a guitar, but a dog in the stone courtyard on execution day? Unheard of. The senior officer noted, "He's got no family, no friends. Let him go in peace." Ethan's file was clean: no fights, no violations, no escape attempts. Just one note. 8 years ago, he got a German shepherd named Max, kept with him. After a long pause, the warden said, "All right, but under strict supervision. 10 minutes max." Words spread through the prison. Some shook their heads, others whispered about the strange bond between man and animal. For Ethan, those minutes were eternity. The prison courtyard was silent, a stillness it rarely held. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Guards took positions, the warden watched from above, and Ethan stood steps from a wooden chair. His hands were cuffed in front, not too tight. His eyes locked on the heavy doors at the courtyard's end. Behind them was all that remained of his old life. A creak sounded. The doors swung open, and Max was let out. His black and tan coat gleamed in the morning light. Flanked by 2 guards holding a short leash, Max's ears perked, his tail twitched, and his movements grew eager. He'd recognized his owner. Ethan couldn't hold back and dropped to his knees. The warden gave a slight nod. The leash slackened. Max bolted, crashing into Ethan's chest. The dog knocked him over, pressing his head to Ethan's shoulder, whimpering as if mourning their long separation. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. He buried his face in Max's fur, breathing in the scent of forest walks, wet earth, quiet nights when Max's breathing kept despair at bay. For a moment, the walls, bars, and sentence vanished.
It was just them.
But Max's body tensed, tail still, ears alert, a low growl rumbling. He lifted his head, staring off. Ethan felt the dog's hackles rise. 3 meters away stood Officer Daniel Pierce, tall, stern, face like stone. Arms crossed, he avoided Ethan's gaze. Max bared his teeth, growling low, the sound chilling. "Calm him," a guard said, stepping forward. Ethan placed a hand on Max's back, whispering, "Easy, Max, it's okay." But he knew it wasn't. Max never growled without reason. That look, that quiet rage, the dog knew something. Officer Ramirez, the senior guard who'd always been fair to Ethan, frowned. "Strange. Pierce was on duty the night of your arrest, but his name's not in the report." Ethan's heart tightened, thoughts racing. If Max sensed danger, there was truth being hidden. The warden shouted from above, "What's going on?" No answer came. Tension hung in the air. Pierce's gaze grew colder. Max kept growling, and Ethan felt it. This wasn't goodbye. It was the start of something bigger. Later that day, Ethan was called to an interrogation room. Max allowed to join. The dog sat by the door, tense, like a guard. Ramirez stood in the corner, arms crossed. Across from Ethan sat Pierce, face carved from stone. The warden asked, "Pierce, why is your name missing from the arrest night report?" Pierce's jaw tightened. "Didn't think it mattered. I was off duty, just passing by." Max leapt up, barking so loud the walls shook. His snarling roar mixed with the echo. He lunged at Pierce's feet, ready to attack. Ramirez stepped forward. Odd coincidence. A witness swears they saw a man matching your description leaving Ethan's house just before the cops arrived. The warden's face darkened, his voice sharp. "We're reviewing the case. Execution's on hold." Ethan's breath caught. For the first time in years, hope flickered. The interrogation room was small, concrete walls, a single dim bulb overhead. The air felt stale, like it held its breath. Ethan sat at the table, hands cuffed. Max lay by his feet, eyes fixed on the door, ready for trouble. Pierce walked in, steps sharp, shoulders tense. He sat across from Ethan, avoiding his gaze. The warden took a seat to the side, Ramirez in the corner. "So," the warden began, voice cold, "explain why you omitted being there that night." Pierce gritted his teeth. "I told you, I was just passing by." Max rose, hackles up, growling low. His eyes locked on Pierce, teeth glinting in the light. Ethan reached for the dog. "Easy, Max," but he knew the dog wasn't wrong. Ramirez stepped closer. "A witness saw someone your height, your build, near Ethan's house minutes before the police showed up." Pierce snapped his head around. "That witness is mistaken." His voice was hard, but a tremor slipped through. Max's growl deepened, as if calling out the lie. The warden frowned. "We're reopening the case." Executions paused. Those words echoed in Ethan's heart. He couldn't believe it. The death sentence was delayed. Hope, fragile and terrifying, returned. The next days were agonizing. Ethan sat in his cell, uncertain of what lay ahead. Max stayed close, his shield. Whenever Pierce appeared, the dog tensed, ready to lunge. For Ethan, it was more than instinct. Max was saying, he's guilty. A new investigation began. Old reports were pulled, evidence re-examined. Fingerprints from the crime scene were retested, and they weren't Ethan's. They matched Pierce. Ramirez brought the news, face stern but eyes showing respect. Prints matched Pierce. Ethan's fists clenched, heart pounding. Max, sensing the tension, stood and barked softly, as if confirming it. The investigation gained speed. A new witness claimed they saw Pierce leaving the victim's house that night. The puzzle came together. Pierce had planted evidence to frame Ethan. Ethan replayed that night. His arrest was swift. Neighbors reported screams. Police found a knife with his prints. No one doubted his guilt then. Now it looked different. Why'd he do it? Ethan asked Ramirez during another visit. The guard shrugged. Personal grudge? Covering for someone? One thing's clear. Max knew from the start. The dog lay at Ethan's feet, ears alert, as if understanding every word. By the third week, evidence piled up. Pierce was arrested in the prison courtyard, officers cuffing him in a tight circle. Max barked so loudly the yard rang with it. Ethan watched from his cell window, anger and relief mixing in his chest. The truth was out, but the court's decision loomed. Prison whispers spread. Some shocked a dog's instinct sparked it all, others saying Max saved Ethan's life. Ethan stayed quiet. For him, it wasn't a miracle or chance. It was loyalty impossible to fake. When his cell door opened weeks later, Ethan's heart nearly stopped. The warden and Ramirez entered, faces serious. All charges are dropped. You're free, the warden said. Ethan froze. Max tugged his sleeve, urging him forward. The prison yard greeted them with cold wind, but it didn't scare him anymore. Beyond the fence was more than freedom, a new life. The trial was set for morning. Ethan sat in the courtroom, still in his gray prison uniform, but without cuffs. Max lay at his feet, allowed as an exception, deemed a key witness. Officers and reporters exchanged looks. Nobody had seen this before. Tension filled the room. Pierce sat at the defendant's table, hands cuffed, face stone but eyes betraying fear. For the first time, Ethan faced him not as a prisoner, but as a man with a voice. The prosecutor read new evidence, fingerprints matching Pierce, a witness confirming he was at the victim's house. Proof stacked up, dismantling Pierce's defense. Ethan sat still, thoughts drifting to the nights he spent in a cell, believing his life was over, imagining execution day. Now a new path opened. Max lifted his head, growling softly at Pierce. The room turned, silence falling. Even the judge paused. Seems even the dog knows the killer, the prosecutor said dryly. Some chuckled, but the tension held. That growl carried more truth than words. Ethan stood to speak, knees shaking. His voice faltered but steadied. 7 years I carried a murderer's label. But I always knew the truth wasn't in the papers. It's right here beside me. Max never lied. He senses what people hide. He showed everyone the truth. The judge listened, nodding, his gaze lingering on Max, who sat alert, ready to spring. Pierce's lawyer argued the evidence was planted, the witness mistaken, but his words fell flat. When the prosecutor presented recorded talks and documents where Pierce contradicted himself, the room buzzed. Ethan felt the chains fall, though none were on him. After a recess, the judge returned, voice firm. All charges against Ethan Carter are dropped. Daniel Pierce is guilty of murder and evidence tampering. The words hit like thunder. Ethan closed his eyes. Max barked once, sharp and sure, as if sealing it. Freedom wasn't instant. Ethan was held a few days for paperwork, but when the prison doors opened for him, he stepped out not as an inmate, but as a man reborn. Max ran ahead, pulling as if afraid it could change. Ethan knelt at the gate, hugging him. "We did it, buddy," he whispered. Reporters and cameras waited, but the world shrank to just him and his dog. Life outside wasn't easy. Prison left scars. Some recognized him, turned away, or whispered, but Ethan held on. He started each day walking Max through the woods. Every night, he sat on the porch of a small cabin volunteers helped him rent, stroking Max's fur, listening to his steady breathing. Nightmares woke him, thinking he was back in his cell, but Max was there, grounding him. One evening, Ramirez visited, no longer a guard but a friend. "You should know, Ethan," he said. "Without Max, we wouldn't have dug deeper. Sometimes truth hides where you least expect it." Ethan nodded, his chest heavy yet light. His story spread, letters came, offering help jobs, but Ethan took his time. All he needed was the quiet, the woods, and his loyal friend. They'd survived more than most could bear. Now each dawn, he said, "Thanks, Max." The dog, as if understanding, rested his head on Ethan's knees. Months later, winter in rural Maine was cold, but to Ethan, it felt different. Fresh air didn't cut. It filled him with strength. Every morning, he and Max walked the forest, snow crunching underfoot, Max racing ahead, barking joyfully. To others, they were just walks. To Ethan, they were symbols of new life. He'd pause, look at the sky, and thank fate for an impossible second chance. Neighbors warmed to him, seeing how he cared for Max, how they walked for hours, Max always close, guarding him. Kids loved petting the shepherd, once fierce in prison, now gentle. Ethan worked at a small workshop, earning enough for a simple life. Evenings, he sat by the fire, Max at his feet. Ramirez visited sometimes, and they'd sip coffee in silence. No words needed. "You've changed," Ramirez said once. "I'm just living," Ethan replied. "That's what matters now." His story hit the news, headlines about the dog who stopped an execution. Some saw a miracle, others a lesson, but Ethan knew it was no miracle. It was love and loyalty, needing no proof. One evening, after a walk, he knelt before Max, looked into his eyes, and said, "You saved my life. Now I live for you." Max nuzzled his shoulder, tail wagging, a gesture holding gratitude, friendship, and a promise they'd never part. By the fire that night, Ethan watched shadows dance on the walls. The past 7 years of darkness no longer scared him. They proved light could be found in the darkest places, and for him, that light was Max.